And today we're going to be going over the top 20 underrated troops in Gems of War. This is a highly opinionated video because you could say certain troops are underrated, but I think they're rated properly, even if you think they're good or not. You could think some of the troops should make this list that I think are properly seated, and whose list are we going by anyway? But I'm just going to go over some troops that I think people underrate that could be rated at least a little bit higher. That doesn't mean they have to be a B tier and they should be an S tier. It doesn't mean they're like a C tier and should be an A tier. It just means that they're, you know, in a certain tier and should be at least a little bit higher. So let's get into it. These are troops that you don't see very often, at least. If I mention one and you see it all the time on a team, just let me know, but I doubt it because I tried to make these troops you don't see all the time. So let's go. We're going to start from Mythic and go down to Common. I have at least one from each rarity, and I don't know if I'm going to make teams or not. I don't think so. I think the video would be too long. I'll just talk about them, and then you guys can mess with them when you know, maybe you haven't even heard of these troops before, or maybe you've never thought of trying them, or maybe you didn't know they were good. But all these troops are good, and they're just a little bit underrated, at least. Some of them are really underrated, and some of them are just a little bit underrated. So let's go. First one is available right now. Flaming Oni, I think, is a little bit underrated, just a tad. 22 green, red, brown, Zacian, Daemon, Goblin. Summon 3 random goblins, then explode a bunch of green and gain an extra turn. It also converts 2 red gems to burning gems when my turn begins, and summons a firestorm at the start of battle. And it's immune to fire as well, so it can't be, you know, backfired. I don't know, it's just a really good safety valve, like a last slot. Like, if you have a really good 3-person team, you can put it in last slot, and you're probably not going to lose, because it summons a bunch of goblins, which are always good, extra turns. You know, could summon Gob Truffle, or High King Iron Gut, or Fun Dingus, or String Fiddler. It's got a bunch of good summons in there. So sometimes you'll see a troop that summons something and it's just not good. Or you'll see something that summons a typing that's, you know, hard to find a good one of. Or most of the time you're going to get something crappy. Well, this summons goblins, which most of them are good. Like, almost every single goblin is good. And the top half of the goblins are really good. So, and it blows up a ton of green, which a lot of stuff uses green. And it gains an extra turn. So you do all of that, and then it's still your turn. So I think it's really good and just slightly underrated. People do use this, and, you know, I think it's like close to a top 20, but I think other people poop on it a little bit. All right, next up, this one I do use. I mean, I use Flaming Oni, but like other people. You don't see these other places, I mean. Hatiran Scroll, I think, is underrated a little bit. And the main reason I think it's underrated is it converts green gems to lycanthropy gems. And when people see lycanthropy gems, they just, you know, don't even look at the troop, because everybody hates that heroic gem. But 23 blue, red, purple, Magrim Woods, Elemental Beast. That's good already. Elemental Beast. 2 ways to 50% start it. The Mirage Queen, Forest Guardian, and both do skulls. Mirage Queen, Forest Guardian, both do skulls, and 50% start Hatiran Scroll. And Hatiran Scroll does skulls, so it's already starting a team with just its 50% start. You could just either do the Mirage Queen or Forest Guardian, and you already have the start of a team. Convert all green gems to lycanthropy gems and all yellow gems to doom skulls. Summon a Winter Wolf or Warg. So it's one of those double converts, and it has a summon on it too. And like I said, it's an elemental beast. Green to lycanthropy, and it can't be lycanthropied. It's impervious, so it can mess up the entire enemy's team. It's a skull troop. It does a double convert. Yellow gems to doom skulls. I just like it. It's nice. I have it on my red Guild Wars team that I made up, and doesn't lose very often. So try it out. You should try it out. Just get past the lycanthropy thing. You're not going to get lycanthropied. You're immune anyway. So put it with some other troops that are immune to it, and you can really mess up the enemy's team. And hit them hard with skulls, too. Alright, this one, when it came into the game, I felt like was a little bit underrated, and I don't see it very often. So here we go with another Mythic. Piscia. I think Piscia is a little bit underrated. 24 blue, red, brown, Merlantis, Merfolk. Destroy all green gems. Create blue gems equal to the number of green gems destroyed. There are 2 independent 30% chances to devour a random enemy. So 30% isn't like super high, but it's 2 chances, so that pretty much raises it. You know what I mean? You got two 30% chances, so it's not just... It feels much higher than that. It feels more like a 50% chance or higher. But if you can put a bunch of green on the board and then create blue gems equal to the... You're destroying green, first of all, which gives you green mana. So if you have green on your team, it's going to destroy all the green. So if there's 20-something green, you're going to get 20-something mana. And then it creates blue gems equal to the number of green gems destroyed. So if there's 20-something green, you're going to put 20-something blue on the board. And there's already other blue on the board. So you're probably going to get an extra turn. It might as well say extra turn on there if you're casting it right. And then it has a chance to devour. So really cool troop. I like it. Submerge myself when I take damage. 30% skull reduction. Give 4 attack to all blue allies and matching blue gems. Not the best traits in the world, but it's okay. And then, yeah, if you're going to get an extra turn. And it makes a ton of blue. And it uses blue. And then you can cast it again sometimes. So it's a little bit loopy. But, you know, it's not known as a loop troop, but it could be. As long as you're putting enough green onto the board, maybe a green storm or a blue storm. You know, merfolk can be 50% started. It's cool. I like it. It's kind of like a Centurigon almost. Just a little bit different. All right, next up, number 4. These are not in any order except for rarity order. You can put them in order if you want, but I don't know. I don't know how you'd put underrated troops in order. We got Sycorax. Now, y'all know this was going to be on the list because I like Sycorax, and I think not enough people use it. And, you know, it's really good. I like it. 25 blue, green, brown, Blackhawk, Elemental Mystic. Double a chosen color gem on the board, then create 3 more gems of that color. Give life to all allies of that color. So most of the time you're going to use it in like Guild Wars or like a color restriction where you have a team of all the same color. A lot of times for me it was brown or blue, I think. And, you know, if you have, let's say, at least 15 to 20 of a certain color, like green, blue, or brown, and then you double that, and then you create 3 more, you know, you're gonna loop. So I like it. It's good. It's really loopy. It likes to set off those third traits for the 4 or 5 gym matches. So stuff like Mistralis, Megavore, anything that does something on 4 or 5 gym match, it sets those off over. It's like the thing that sets those off. It's nice. So if you're ever looking to set off a third trait, that's when you match a 4 or 5 gym match, then consider Sycorax to set those off. But it's an elemental, it's a mystic, so you can 50% start it on elemental, and I just really like it. I think it's good first slot, and the only problem with it is you got to get it up. So you need something like 13 mana at the start of battle to get it up, because you're going to 50% start it. But once you get it up and it starts looping, you're not going to lose, and it's going to set off those third traits that you've been wanting to set off. You know, Possessed King, Megavore, Mistralis, anything you could think of that has a cool third trait like that. Alright, we're down to the legendaries now. Let's go. So those were the mythics. We had Flaming Oni, Hatiran Scroll, Piscia, and Sycorax. If you have any that you think are underrated, put them in the comments. We're down to the legendaries. We have Garyon. I think Garyon's very slightly underrated. 20 yellow, brown, Leonis Empire monster. Convert all green gems to blue and convert purple gems to Doom Skulls. Drain 2 mana from all enemies. You see the theme here. I like these troops, and I think some of them are underrated. You're going to drain 2 mana from all enemies. That's nice. I think this was put into the game before the Spirit Gems. So it's a cool way to like mess up the enemy's team once again and just draining 2 from them. If they have troops that are up, that just takes them from being ready to cast to not being ready to cast, which is cool. Waste one of their turns. Green to blue, purple gems to Doomskull. It's a monster, so that's not great. It's only just a monster. That's probably the worst part about it. But, I don't know. I like it. It summons a Doomstorm at the start of battle. You always want to see that on a troop like this because there'll be more skulls on the board to then convert color to skull and then line up the skulls. Poison and stun a random enemy and matching 4 or more gems. You can do something with that poison. Stun is always welcome. So I really like it. And we need to find more teams for it. I think that's the hardest thing. It's a monster, and it's hard to find teams for it. But by itself, just looking at it and reading the card, I think it's good, and we just need to find a good team for it. Next up... Nway, 18 green, purple, Merlantis, Merfolk, Mystic. Transform yellow gems to skulls and red gems to purple. Silence the 2 strongest enemies. You see a theme? I kind of like these troops, and I don't think they get used enough. A double convert, yellow to skull, red to purple. And then you silence the 2 strongest enemies. That's always cool when you have something after. If it's just a double convert, it's still pretty good. But when you have that and then something else, I think that's a good troop. So slightly underrated here. Steal 4 life from the first enemy matching green. No good traits really, but it's a Merfolk Mystic. You can 50% start it. And yeah, see if you can find a team for it. And I think it'd be pretty good. Don't forget about nway. This is the list of, hey, keep these in mind and don't forget about them. Maybe throw them on a team or make a team around them. Okay, what's next? Underrated troops, baby. We got Sekma, 18 red, purple, Pride Lands, roxa, Mystic. Transform blue gems to skulls and transform brown gems to yellow. I promise you they're not all this. It just happens like a lot of them in the top are this kind of troop. But transforming blue to skull and brown to yellow deal damage to an enemy boosted by all other allies' magic. So pretty good boost ratio there for the damage. I forget what happens first. I can't remember if it deals the damage and then transforms or if it transforms and then deals the damage, but either way, you can make cool stuff happen. You can either kill something off and then hit the next thing with skulls, or you can kill stuff with skulls and then hit the next thing with the spell damage. Like, it's doing... It might as well be one of these conversion troops that hits twice. So, pretty cool. No good traits once again. That's probably why it's not, like, super highly rated, but I like the spell. I like the idea of the spell. It's kind of like a Sir Quentin Hadley in what it does. Except for Sir Quentin Hadley has a 50% start, so everybody knows about Sir Quentin Hadley, but Sekma kind of does the same kind of spell as Sir Quentin Hadley, but just doesn't have the 50% start thing. So, I don't know, keep it, try it out. Next up, Shagaroth, one of my favorite in the game. I gotta give it some love, I gotta get more people out there trying it. It's an underworld legendary. That automatically... I think it's underrated because you can get it so easily. 16 blue, purple, Dripping Caverns, Groshnock, Elemental Monster. Silence and deal true damage to the first and last enemies. So true damage to multiples, silence to multiples. Explode, that's not it. That's not all. Explode 5 gems of the most used ally mana color. So a mana generator. A disruptor, a debuffer. True damage on multiple targets, and then it's going to explode and get some of its mana back. So really good troop, I think. And it has traits. Enrage a random ally when an ally casts a spell. It's got that too, which is good. Plus it has one of the coolest audio clips in the game when you cast it. It like screams. So there's some things that you don't even think about where it just makes a troop even cooler. Easy to get, cool audio clip. Multiple things that it's doing. It's just a legendary, too. 16 mana cost, that's all. 50% start it. Let's go. This might be the most underrated troop in the game. Wish it hit all enemies, but you can put 2 of them on your team, and you got enough ammo to kill all the enemies. It goes good with vnoxia. It goes good with some other good troops like that, so... Next up... We got Tannenbaum. 16 green, yellow, Silverglade, Elemental Fae. Deal damage to an enemy, then entangle them and pull them to the front. Deal triple skull damage versus entangled enemies. Impervious and 33% skull reduction. It's pretty much a troop, like a whole team all by itself almost. It just needs some mana generation. Put this guy with some mana generation and you have an entire team ready to go. It's dealing damage to an enemy, then it's entangling them, and then it's pulling them to the front. So then it can do triple skull damage versus that entangled enemy. And then you're going to want it in first slot, so it has the 33% skull reduction, like a well-thought-out troop, I feel, that doesn't get used enough. Because everybody always thinks of, like, Fireblade, the triple damage to burning, or you might think of Borealis, the triple damage to frozen. But we got this, too, which is triple damage to entangled, which is pretty sweet, because if you can entangle the enemy, they can't backfire you. If you're burning an enemy, they can still use the skulls that you're trying to put on the board to hit them with the triple damage because they're burning. If you got a frozen enemy, they can still hit you back with skulls. If you put some skulls on the board and miss, they can still hit you back. Well, with this, you entangle them, then you put skulls on the board, and they can't hit you back. So, pretty cool. It's like a well-thought-out troop. I think it's a little bit underrated. Next up, this one's probably an obvious one that I just don't feel like people use it enough, except for me. So, we need to get more people out there using this. We got Vnoxia, who I just mentioned. It's really good with Shagar. 16 green, purple, Mist of Scales, dragon. You guys like dragons? Don't forget about Vnoxia. Create 9 green and 9 blue gems, then deal true damage to all enemies. So just the fact that it has true damage to all enemies is good. You can 50% start it on dragon. It's not that high of a mana cost. It creates 9 green and 9 blue gems, which is a little bit low, but it still loops sometimes. As long you can like use it with Takshaka or Queen Beatrix or stuff like that. So you can make sure you put some sort of green on the board, a green storm, and then when it does the 9 green and 9 blue, it might loop because you're going to put green on the board before you cast it. Poisons a random enemy in 4 or 5 gem match. Of course, they're mowing at not even 8 o'clock in the morning. Have you guys have to deal with that? Yeah, it's not even 8 a.m. yet, and they're mowing right out in front of my house. They got the freaking fire hydrant flushing for longer than 24 hours. Somebody please call and complain. Like, it's crazy. Let's see. Next up. So we're done with the legendaries. That was the legendaries. We had Garyon, nway, Sekma, Shagra. Oh, I didn't do Shagra. Hold on. We gotta do Shagra. I'm glad I read that because I almost forgot. Shagra's good. It got buffed. Don't forget about the Shagra buff. We had a Broken Spire, like, rework. And I don't know exactly what the buff was, but it did get buffed. 14 red, brown, Broken Spire, Elemental Dragon. Create 7 red gems, then convert all red gems to skulls. Burn a random enemy with matching red gems. Deal double skull damage versus burning enemies. So it does its own thing there. I was just talking about doing extra damage to burning. It will burn the enemy and then deal double skull damage versus burning enemies. So it doesn't need anything else. You don't have to have something else on the team to burn just so you can use that double skull damage. It does it all by itself, kind of like a web spinner, which is always welcome, kind of like a tanan bomb. But it creates 7 red gems. It sounds low, but there's already going to be red on the board. You're going to think about the second half of the spell before you think of the first half of the spell. So you're going to convert all red gems to skulls. All you got to have is some red next to some skulls, because you're going to create 7 red as well, which could fill in the blanks for you and then make an extra turn. So this is one of those conversion troops, except for you don't have to wait around until you have an extra turn. You can just cast it when it's close to an extra turn. So you get to cast this more often than a normal conversion skull troop, which you have to wait until there's definitely an extra turn on the board. This one you don't have to. You can put it in first slot, deal double skull damage versus burning, and almost always get an extra turn as long as you don't cast it like when there's no red on the board next to skulls. So Shagra's good, I think. A little bit underrated. It got a buff and people didn't really, like, you know, slot it a little couple slots higher because of the buff. And I think it should have got slotted a couple slots higher because of the buff. Alright, we're on to the epics. You might know this one if you follow me, but I don't think we see it enough in the game from everybody. Like, you know, people's PvP teams, other channels, whatever you want to say. People mentioning teams in my chat. Like, I don't see these troops enough. So let's get them seen more. We got Fun Dingus. 14, green, reds, Asian, elemental goblin, explode, a bunch of purple, then summon either a giant toadstool or an explode stool, gain an extra turn. I like troops that do a bunch of stuff. A bunch of stuff that you need. I like that. Inflict poison when I take skull damage. Inflict disease when I'm doing skull damage, and it's immune to disease and lycanthropy. So it as an epic troop. It's not a legendary. It's not a mythic. 14 mana cost. You can 50% start it. It's a goblin. It has an extra turn, which is always nice. Almost everything in the game with an extra turn is good. Almost. Blowing up tons of purple. 48. That's the whole board. Depends on your magic. You see my magic's 47. It blows up 48. If your magic's 30, it's going to blow up 31. Still pretty good. Then you got a summon on there. a summon of a toadstool or an explode-stool, a couple annoying troops. So, yeah, I just think it's a little bit underrated. Like, if you're thinking of goblins, think of Fun Dingus sometimes instead of just like the High King Iron Guts, the King Gob Truffles, you know, think of Fun Dingus. I think he's like a top 5, top 10 goblin. Alright, next up. Let's go see Hexrat. Hexrat. Is this the first one that you guys didn't guess, maybe? I don't know. Let me know. Did you guess all of these? What's one? Put it in the comments which one you were, like, the most surprised by. Alright, Hexrat, 13, purple, brown, dark pits, mist of scales, wildfolk mystic. Deal damage to an enemy and all enemies below them. So it hits every enemy. And it's an underworld troop you can go get easily. If the enemy is cursed, deal double damage and death mark them. So if you can curse, inflict curse when dealing skull damage. So if you hit them with the skull and then you cast the spell, you're going to hit them with double damage and death mark them. So that first slot is, you know, wrecked. It's getting it shish splat. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy in 4 or 5 gym match. Traits aren't great, but that first one helps a little bit. But just an option to hit when you have a world event with the spell damage medal. Here's an option you can go and get to hit all enemies. If there's a weird, like, restriction, Wildfolk Mystic, or Dark Pits, or Mist of Scales, you can go get a troop that hits all enemies. So, do double damage. If they're all cursed, you can curse the entire enemy team. It's going to do double damage and death mark. So, I don't know. Just a little bit underrated. I'm not saying it's amazing. I'm just saying if it's like a D+, it should be a C+ or something. Sometimes these troops aren't going to be, like, should make it on top 20s or be in the S tier or A tier. They're just, like, troops I think people rate a little bit too low, like they have it as a D+ when it should be a C+. Next up. Let's go get it, I think. Where is it? And you might think some troops should be on here, but I think they're rated properly and used, you know, enough. Like Daughter of Time, for example, I think is rated properly and used plenty. Shocktopus, 12, green, yellow, blackhawk, merfolk, mech. Destroy 8 gems of a chosen color. Deal true damage to each enemy of that color. Deal double skull damage versus submerged enemies. Gain bonus blue mana from blue gem matches. And reduce damage from skulls by 25%. So it has 3 good traits, like at least 3 useful traits. It's a mana generator and does true damage to every single enemy as long as you're using it in the right spot. It's kind of like a budget the Grey King. So don't forget about Shocktopus. If you don't have the Grey King, maybe check out Shocktopus. This is more for beginners and early mid-game players. It's an option you need to remember when you can't use Rowan or something like that. If it's a yellow and you want to hit all enemies, as long as the enemies have a bunch of the same color, this thing works great. Even if it's just 3 or 2, you know, put 2 of them on the team, 50% start them with Mechanist class or Merfolk, and, you know, it can hit all enemies. As long as you're using it smartly, it's a good troop. Now, if you just get it randomly on your team and then every enemy has different colors, it's not going to be as good. But if you use it strategically, it is pretty good. Next up. I think people forget about this troop. I don't know if you underrate it, but you at least forget about it. Veneratus is good and underrated, I feel. 13 blue, green, Dragon's Claw, Divine Dragon. Convert all red gems into yellow dragon gems. And it's empowered. So this is an empowered converter. People lose their mind about empowered converters all the time. But this one converts red to yellow dragon gems. So they're going to explode downwards. They're not just going to change and give you a bunch of mana. They're going to change, give you a bunch of mana, and then explode downwards. So this is giving you tons of mana. You don't even have to use it. It doesn't have to be like a yellow troop all the time. You can explode downwards and get a bunch of mana for whatever. But, you know, most of the time you're going to want to do it on a yellow team. But reduce damage from spells by 25%. It has it's an empowered converter, and it still has another good trait. So don't forget about Veneratus when you need an empowered converter, basically. Next up, this one, I don't know. Is it underrated? Maybe just a tad. I think people have forgot about it over time. I think it was properly rated like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, but I think nowadays, like, people forget about this troop. So, because there's so many other options, but, you know, you might be able to use it for a little bit here and there, like at the beginning of the game. This is another one of those at the beginning of the game. Sati Warrior. 13 green, brown, Keytar, Monster Knight. Give armor to an ally, deal scatter damage equal to the ally's armor. So it's kind of a Rowan. And Rowan is blue and green. This thing is brown and green. So if it's a brown restriction, you can still do Rowan business with the Sati Warrior. And that's basically it. It's another option to do Rowan stuff. You're gonna boost it with armor, so you can cast this onto your first slot, like your hero who has the most armor already. Give your hero even more armor and more tank ability, and then do better scatter damage based on that armor. And once an enemy dies, scatter damage, is more concentrated, so it's a good troop. I think it's a little bit underrated, like it's forgotten about, at least. Next up, this one is very situational, but a little bit underrated, I think. Another one kind of like Sati Warrior, a little bit forgotten. Sometimes. Some people remember it, and I think it's really smart when they remember it, and some people just totally forget about it. So let's put some more shine on the Spirit Fox here. 9 green, purple, Magrim Woods, Fey Beast. Drain 7 mana from an enemy. Remove all yellow gems. Deal true damage boosted by gems removed. The best part, though, is it's empowered. An empowered damage dealer that's draining mana. So it's really good in like Guild Wars or PvP, Citadel Wars. Anytime you have like a PvP situation and the enemy just keeps getting you with empowered converters and all kinds of crazy stuff that just happens right away, and you can't even like get a turn to try to fight back. Well, think about Spirit Fox. You cast it immediately onto whatever their empowered troop is, and then the troop will no longer be empowered, and you just hit them pretty hard too. You might even kill them, and then it gives you another chance to actually win the fight instead of losing right away and never getting another turn. You got the Spirit Fox here who gives you a little bit of breathing room and like a second turn at least. Little bit underrated. All right, next up, Stone Viper. 12 green, brown, Mist of Scales, Beast Construct. Create 5 yellow gems, then convert all yellow gems to brown. 75% start, Stone Skin, poison enemies when doing skull damage. So good traits. Swift, always welcome. That's a second turn in power if you have an enchant potion. You get 2 mana a turn if you have an enchant potion. And by the time it's your second turn, this thing is up and might as well be empowered. So we call that a second turn empowered. 75% start. At least I think so. I know Harpy Mage does that. Stone Viper at least would be really close to that. I don't know. But you're going to create yellow and then convert it to brown. So there's already going to be yellow on the board. So make sure there's 15, there's somewhere in the teens of yellow or more on the board before you cast this, and then it'll create 5 more. I don't know if it replaces or just adds, but you're going to make more probably either way. And then it'll convert all yellow gems to brown. It uses brown so it can loop back into itself, and you can do it again, and just get a ton of brown mana. Cool troop for early game at least. And just don't forget about it. Sometimes maybe it'll be a good, like, oh, I need something that makes a bunch of brown. Well, you got Stone Viper, who's pretty good. That's a newer troop. That's not super old. That's like in the last 2 years. So, a lot of these lower rarity troops are going to be old troops, but that one was a newer one. Veneratus, Stone Viper, newer good troops that are underrated. We have 2 left. That was number 18, so let's go do number 19. Where is it? Is it here or is it down 1? Might be down 1. Is it rare? So we got a rare troop coming up. I said I had 1 from every rarity. Come on, baby. Alright, we got Trickster. I think this is underrated. When you can't get that stupid Leprechaun, it's taking you forever for some reason at the beginning of the game to get Leprechaun. Well, then, what you gotta do is get your underworld open, go farm your City of Thieves 3 times a day with your Roman team, and go to Pan's Vale, open Chaos Portals, and get yourself a Trickster, because it's like a little budget Leprechaun. 75% start, that's why it's a budget Leprechaun. Leprechaun's empowered, but hey, doesn't take too much to get this thing up. 75% start, 20% chance to dodge, and then it explodes a bunch of green and switch the first and last enemies. So it's a budget Leprechaun before you get Leprechaun. So just remember about Trickster, and it's impossible not to get it. You just go to Pan's Vale and throw shards at the portal, and you will get it. It's just a rare. It's going to be the first thing that pops up. So if you're having trouble getting that Leprechaun, the sooner you think of Trickster, the better. So put the Trickster on the team instead of the Leprechaun until you get the Leprechaun. And it's switching the first and last enemies can really make some teams annoyed. So just a cool budget Leprechaun that's a little bit underrated, I feel. Specifically for that situation. If once you get Leprechaun, you're never going to use it again. But that's... I see that question, I see that comment, I see that complaint all the time. People saying, I got all the rest of the Rowan team, I just can't get the stupid Leprechaun. Well, there's an easy replacement that you can go get, everybody can go get immediately, and it doesn't take any RNG. Just go get it, Trickster, until you get Leprechaun. Issue solved. Alright, last one. It's a common. And this one might be the, out of the whole list, this one might be the one you would say, that's not underrated. People know about that one. But, I don't know. I think it's very slightly underrated, like by a tiddlywink, by a nipple hair. We got Bog Strider. 8 green, Mist of Scales, elemental monster. Destroy a bunch of gems and entangle a random enemy. Reduce damage from skulls by 33%. Inflict entangle when doing skull damage. You put it at the top of your team on a green team. It's got tank ability, and it entangles when it does skull damage, so they can't hit it. That's just a bunch of tanking as a common that can tank, you know. And on top of that, it's a mana generator, and it's entangling over here too. So you're just gonna entangle them. You're gonna mana generate. You're gonna have a tank. It's a lot of stuff for a common to be doing that you can 50% start, and then it only needs 4 mana. So don't forget about Bog Strider when you need. You can't use Leprechaun, but you need a mana generator / like, you know, semi-tank. Bog Strider, underrated. But yeah, that's it for today. I'm not sure when this is coming out. It's for members only, starting out, and then maybe later on I'll release it to everybody else. We'll see how it does for the members, what the members think of it. Just trying to give back to the members because we switched up how we do things these days. We're doing live streams like 90% of the time. So some of the perks for being a member were based on the pre-recorded videos, like getting to see them early and getting shout-outs in them and stuff like that, and being able to suggest a video. So, you know, consider becoming a member. I know that's the stupidest thing to say on this one. I mean, I guess if I release it to the public. But anyway, giving back to the members because I need to, and you guys voted on this, and here it is. So thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Consider joining helps a lot. Tell your good about the channel, comment below, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.